What's going on, Giants fans? Brandon London here with Paul Schwartz. We're outside of Quest Diagnostics Training Center for your Blue Rush post-practice report. Yeah, we're talking about practice, but we're also talking about minicamp, OTAs. We're going to break down the entire spring, Paul. I guess first things first. Let's just talk about the vibe around these practices, just around the building. You hear a lot of players talking about how Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston has brought in a different type of aura and confidence around the place. You've been at every single OTA, every single mini camp. I think I'm around like 90% attendance. So I'll start with you first. What is the biggest thing that you've noticed from both players, coaches, practice from this spring?
Well, one caveat I have to say right away is that this is when, there's a phrase, hope springs eternal, right?
Yes.
In the spring. So I would say if we videoed this for the last 25 years, which there was no video back then, right, to do this kind of thing, that I would be staying here after the last day of the spring and say, you know what, there's a pretty good vibe. There's a pretty good vibe. Okay, so let's take that away and say, okay, if you're not having some sense of optimism now, then you're in big trouble. Now, number two, I would say what's going on here in around these, this perimeter here, inside these walls and out in those practice fields, is completely different than everything we hear on the outside.
Yes.
Which is they're not good. They're going to be in last place. They won 3 games. Maybe they'll win 3 or 4 or 5.
Jackson Dart is struggling.
They're not good. The roster's not good. They can't beat the Eagles or the Cowboys or the Commanders. Okay, let's put that to the side also, because in here you don't feel any of that. And I think that the typical spring enthusiasm is okay there. We can chalk that up. But what you mentioned before is the key. 3 new quarterbacks. That's a lot of new quarterbacks. Tommy DeVito's the only one who's remaining. 3 new quarterbacks, all interesting, different roles, different personalities, different expectations. And when you do that and you bring in guys of the caliber of a Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, who's just an interesting guy, and then you draft in the first round an effervescent, bubbly energy machine in Jackson Dart, who people believe will be the quarterback of the future, you change the vibe. That's all there is to it, because quarterbacks infiltrate everything.
Tell me if I'm wrong or not, but every time there's a coach or there's a player standing up at media availability talking to the media in the scrum, when a question is asked about the quarterback room, you hear 2 things: confidence and leadership. And as a player right now, you can feel a team building something. When you're watching tape, whether you're on the defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball, you're watching your group of guys, you're watching your unit, but you also get a chance to see, oh man, that quarterback made that throw. Oh man, that receiver, Darius Slayton, switches to 18, he's balling, he's making catches. Hey man, look at that connection or that chemistry between Russell Wilson and Jalen Hyatt. We haven't seen that before. So when you're sitting and you're watching these films and you're breaking down these practices and these OTAs and these just anything on the field where there's competition periods, you can tell that guys are seeing something that they haven't seen before if they've been here. And if you're new here, you're like almost like, wait, this is that Giants team that they talked about struggled with confidence, that struggled with the way they practice. They're not seeing that here, and I think that's something great to build on with 34 days left until training camp.
Once again, it's the dichotomy of the outside and the inside. On the outside, Russell Wilson is a 36-year-old quarterback whose career, kind of nosedived a little bit after a great almost decade in Seattle.
Yeah.
Went to Denver, had some good moments, but clashed with Sean Payton, and they couldn't wait to get rid of him. Went to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, had a nice start, had a rough finish, lost 4 regular season games and a playoff game, and they had no interest in re-signing him at all, right? So you take that and put that over there, and what that means as far as maybe he's an older quarterback on the decline. That's what he looks like, versus what he is in this building where, first of all, he is the consummate professional. You mentioned leadership. Look, it's just who Russell Wilson is. Now, I'm not going to say he's not for everybody. He's so positive and so professional that he almost seems phony. And I don't think he is, right? I mean, you've been around quarterbacks. He just, he sits down with guys. People in the building say he'll be sitting down and talking to just anybody, and just talking to them and what's going on and this and that. Look, this was all voluntary. Russell Wilson was at Knick games. He's got a famous wife. He's got a family. Did he have to be at every single OTA? I mean, those guys always, they have to do this, they have to do that, they have a charity thing. It doesn't even have to be goofing off. He was everywhere. I asked him on Tuesday, look, are you ready for, after tomorrow, meaning today, Wednesday, are you ready for a break? Everyone wants a break. You get a month off. He goes, no, I wish we could keep going. Yeah. And that sounded good, but I think he was serious. He was like, no, we got too much to do. We got too much to do. And Brian Dable and these, I like what Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson said. They said after throwing with him in the offseason, they said, you know what? Wan'Dale and Slayton looked at each other and were like, this is better than we thought.
Yep.
He just better. He just throws the ball better. He spins it better than we thought. So all the spring work with Russell Wilson is 100% positive. Training camp will slow down a little bit when the pads come on, and then we'll see what happens. But right now, you cannot look at this Russell Wilson signing and say, you may say, I don't like it, but you can't say, I don't like the vibes, because the vibes are through the roof.
Yeah, because right now, the way he just started off, these practices that I've been that I've attended, we're seeing moonball. At least 1 to 2 moon balls per practice. You see the familiarity and the comfortability that he's getting with the Darius Slayton down the field. He and Wan'Dale Robinson have that little short Wes Welker, Tom Brady short game, quick pass game thing going on. And then again, he's unlocking the talents of a Jalen Hyatt who didn't practice today. But at the same time, I think we will all agree, everybody on the beat will agree that Jalen Hyatt had himself a solid spring. Malik Neighbors hasn't gotten out there and practiced in terms of competition periods as he's kind of nursing that toe and getting ready for a long season with probably another 100-catch season. But that's giving guys like Theo Johnson times to get reps. Daniel Bellinger has come down with some plays. Fedoni, tight end, the 7th-round pick out of Nebraska, you've seen him been able to make some plays. And because Russ is playing with this confidence and this aura, that's allowed a young guy like Jackson Dart to where we haven't agreed much on when he will play. But if Russ can keep that aura, that moon ball, and that production going with this offense, then Jackson Dart will be able to redshirt. And he's another guy that people are saying, you go on TikToks and the social medias, and people are saying, oh, he's struggling. Oh, he's throwing interceptions. I'm 100% sure, because I've talked to some people within the building, he's not getting a negative rep for trying to force a ball in there or trying to throw a ball up, a 50-50 ball up to a wide receiver, and that gets picked off. Now, you could get a red ink on there or a negative because it's like, all right, I want your ball placement to be a little bit higher. This ain't Ole Miss. Hey, I want you to get that ball out quicker. But at least this kid is showing that confidence of wanting to try and fit that ball in, wanting to try and give his receivers some sort of a chance, which we receivers, we want. We don't want you to throw the ball away in practice. We want you to throw that rock. So, we're here because we're here at these practices. Yeah, you may see a report where Jackson Dart threw 2 interceptions, but it's not something to where it's like, oh, he tried to throw it. What a bad interception. It's an interception because, he could have thrown it away, but we talking about practice.
Look, first of all, this is when the mistakes, as Brian Dable said, when training camp comes in 34 days, that's when we tolerate fewer mistakes.
Yes.
We're getting ready for the season. We don't tolerate that. Look, training camp too. You can tolerate mistakes, but it's different.
Yeah.
Now, yes, there's no sense in him dirting the ball, throwing it, throw it up there. And you know what? This is also the time to make mistakes. He is a rookie.
Yes.
He is a rookie. He will make mistakes. What I've noticed about Jackson Dart is, first of all, he's got good size. He's a thick guy.
Yeah,
he's not a skinny guy.
No, not at all.
Some of the rookies, you say, he needs to. He's a thick athlete. He's got big legs. It looks like he's got big hands. He's got that little bit of a, would you call it a little bit, not side,
like
on,
a sidewinder, like a little
sometimes
fling.
He will do a little. He doesn't come way over the top.
Yeah.
He's got a little bang like that, which is fine. That's fine. Yeah. Now there was one practice last week where he got a couple of balls batted down. Brian Burns came in and knocked some balls down. Okay, so that's going to be in his mind. You know what? He even mentioned in his press conference today that, I'm learning that, I could make that throw, and then, okay, I could make that throw, but now these guys are better than the guys I've ever played against. So now that throw, I need to put a little more this, a little more that. Okay, Javon Holland and Adebo and Tay Banks, these guys. Okay, Dane Belton. Oh, they're better than the guys I played in the SEC, even though those are really good college players. So Dart has a definite charisma about him, and he's another one that that when I talked to players at Ole Miss, he had his hands, not physically, but almost spiritually on everybody. All the defensive players, all the offensive players. He helped recruit a lot of guys, that he will be a very popular guy in that locker room.
Yeah.
But you know what? Jameis Winston is a popular guy. Tommy DeVito, no one ever said he's not a popular guy.
Not at
And
all.
Tommy, I asked him, how was that room? He said, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He said, we work, but it's a lot of fun. So what did he say? He and Tommy said he and Jackson Dart might make an appearance on Love Island. Right.
They say they watch some of the
Yeah,
shows. That's
yeah,
big. You
yeah.
know, Page Six is a sister or a brother to the New York Post. We hear the Page Six people talk about Love Island
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time. So
yeah.
now I got to get hip on that to be able to talk to Tommy DeVito and to Jackson Dart. I feel like that old player
Well,
now.
that's what he said.
Yeah,
He said, look,
yeah.
Russ and Jameis are great, but they're older. They got wives. They got kids.
Yeah.
They can't be dealing with that. Hey, I go back to when a show called The Bachelor was starting. No one
Okay,
ever knew what the
okay.
hell it was. And a backup quarterback, Jesse Palmer,
Yep.
had to go into Tom Coughlin's office and say, Coach, they want me to be the first bachelor on this show, and it's gonna be in the off season. We're gonna film the whole thing.
Interesting.
And Tom Coughlin's like, what? You're gonna do what?
Yeah.
In what? I'm not gonna miss anything. Okay. Jesse Palmer became the first Bachelor. He's a big media personality, and as far as I can tell, I think The Bachelor has done fairly well as a TV series, right? So maybe DeVito and Dart will in 15 years they're going to be
Dude.
launched into something bigger than football here.
That could definitely be a reality show
Yeah.
that a lot of people will watch.
Yeah.
And shout out to Tom Coughlin for allowing Jesse to do that, because my rookie year, that offseason, I got into modeling
Yeah.
while I was here. And Amani Toomer, those guys used to make fun of me all the time. Amani, even now, will come up to me now. I'm 40 years old. London, you still a male model? Still say it to this day. So shout out to Coughlin for allowing us to see there are other things outside of football, especially back then when I was looked at as a distraction.
You know, it's interesting because I tried to get into male modeling
I
too.
can see that.
It never really clicked.
Okay.
I don't know why.
All right.
You know, look at these body types. Why? I don't understand why. Well, whatever. We can do that at a different podcast.
Speaking
I
of
guess,
body types,
Yeah.
Jermaine Illuminor
Yeah.
spoke to the media as well. Again, he's another guy that's talked about the quarterback room,
Yeah.
the leadership is
Mhm.
different this year. And he made sure to say, hey, this is no knock
That's right.
on Daniel or any of those guys, but you could feel it. He's also talked about Evan Neal and what he's seen from Evan Neal in terms of getting kicked out from left tackle to right tackle, now to left guard. I mean, that's a hard position. And Jermaine kind of spoke about that with how he had to go from right tackle to left tackle last year with Andrew Thomas, and to go inside to left guard. He said it's a lot more. It's faster. Things happen faster. What have you seen from Evan Neal so far? I guess even though there's no pads on right now.
It looks like he knows his assignments.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
that's a
all
win.
I can say.
Yeah, okay.
That's all I can say. There's no pads. There's no contact. He's not getting knocked over. He's not knocking somebody over. It looks like for the most part he is where he needs to be. And look, there's a lot more passing off there. Jermaine Illuminor said. He said it's very hard. It's hard to move. And I also asked him about the mental. Look, there are no real marquee players on the offensive line, but if there is one, it's the left tackle. They get the most money.
Yep.
And the other thing is the
Absolutely.
right tackle. The
Absolutely.
tackles are the stars of the offensive line. So mentally, just to say to Evan Neal, look, we tried it at right tackle with you for 3 years. It didn't work. We're moving you inside the guard. He will compete for the starting right guard spot with Greg Van Roten, okay? He will this summer. And that is a mental hurdle you have to get through. It just is. It's like them telling you, look, you didn't cut it at wide receiver, you're going to be a special teams guy. Okay, you have to mentally say, if I want to stick around, and look, this was the number 7 pick in the draft. So we'll see if he can do it. I think that one of the interesting things Jermaine Illuminor said, don't forget a couple of weeks ago, he was involved in a pretty decent fight with Kayvon and Brian
skirmish.
Burns.
Yeah.
Little OTA skirmish, right? And he said, somebody, well, why? And he said, well, you know what? We're competing hard. We're all sick of losing. There's been a lot of losing, and like we talked about the vibe earlier, you don't get a losing vibe here, but let's face it, once things, training camp starts and every team's out there practicing, the Giants as a 3-win team that's not a good team is all that narrative will surface again, and the Giants are going to have to beat that back as they do their work.
I feel like they've, like in the off season where they are away from the building, I feel like they've had a lot of conversations within their not only position group, just team. Guys that they knew they were all coming back.
Yeah.
I feel like they had conversations because you see how intentional they are when it comes to practicing. And you look at a guy like Kayvon. We know everything that Kayvon has in front of him right now. This guy is full go every rep, every practice. Now, sometimes I'm sitting there, the receiver in me is like, man, why don't you tone it down a little bit? There's no pads on. Don't bat that ball down. Allow the receivers and the DBs to kind of fight for that ball, allow them to compete. But you're looking at Kayvon and how intentional and a lot of these other guys are with the way they're practicing. And I'm not just talking about competition periods. We've seen videos from Madeline Burke, me, myself, just people from the other beat writers of all the trio of Abdul Carter, Kayvon, and Brian Burns working together on the sideline during pass rush drills and all. They're not just half-assing this, Paul. They're going after the bag. They're spinning at full speed. They're ripping, going for the rip to cause some sort of fumble. I really think this defensive line has bought in, and they really understand, like, it's a healthy competition between us three in terms of, let's put $100K on who has the most sacks. All their money's good for it. They can do $100K, and that's just a friendly competition type thing. And then you have Dexter Lawrence too, who you throw into the mix. A lot of people are talking about how dangerous this pass rush can be, but they're not just taking it. They're not taking the compliments and allowing that go to their head. They're taking the compliments and they're putting that in their work at each practice.
Well, look, if the New York Post hired a junior Pulitzer Prize-winning sports writer, right, whose specialty was football, and they said, we're just going to bring him in the mix here, Paul, see how you do. Yeah. It'd be like, I'd be a fool not to say, you know what? He's in the building now.
He's in the building.
I better pick it up a little bit. You know, I'm good, but I better pick it up even more because there's somebody younger. Look, Abdul Carter is, you know, we talk about the quarterbacks, we talk about Jackson Dart. Abdul Carter, you cannot have had a spring. Look, I try to temper it, right? These guys, there's no pads. It's not in underwear, but there is not pads, so it's not football. But I try to temper it and say, look, I know he did great things at Penn State. He's the third pick in the draft. I think he'll be tremendous, but let's just wait and see. And I am going to wait and see, but everything this spring has indicated that this guy is different and special.
Yes.
He works hard. He gets into the music, while he's stretching. He's respectful. And you know what else? He brings a little something. He's got this nastiness to him, which we don't really see on the field yet. But they talk about, Kayvon Thibodeau was talking this week about, I need to finish better. You know, I do a lot of good things, and at the top of my rush, I don't finish. I should have double-digit sacks, but I missed the sack, I missed this, I get my leverage wrong, I did everything right, and I don't finish. I need to finish better, because Kayvon said I should be a double-digit sack guy all the time. He was 2 years ago with 11.5 sacks. Last year he missed a bunch of games, and he fell far short of that. But the defensive coaches say Abdul Carter has that, and we didn't teach it to him. It is innate ability to finish the rush and get to the quarterback and put him down, get to the running back and put him down. It is something that the great ones have. We'll see if Abdul Carter becomes great, but that is, I mean, Russell Wilson leadership thing. This is a young 20s stud who they drafted, who could be the next great player for the Giants. I mean, the next great player for the Giants, and if he is, then Burns gets better, Thibodeau gets better, Dexter Lawrence in the middle gets better. It's, you know, we're on the ground floor of something that could be very special here.
Without a doubt, I think after next year's training camp, not this year, I think he gets named one of the team captains. Just by the season.
Can we wait and let him play before we make him a team captain?
Paul, you were just saying it yourself, how everyone is saying this kid is different.
Does that mean Dexter's not going to be here? Does that mean Bobby Okereke's not going to be here? Let's just let him be the defensive rookie of the year first.
Well,
okay?
remember there was that one year where it was almost like me and you were team captains. He named everybody a captain.
Yes, they were. Now there's fewer captains, and let's. You know what? I don't know if Malik Neighbors is ever going to be a team captain. I have no idea, but he's a darn good player, and he might be one of the 2 or 3 best receivers in the league. Team captains are a different category. I mean, I just think they are. And you know, if you ask me right now, will Jackson Dart ever be a Giants team captain? I would probably say probably yes. He's a quarterback. He'll be
Okay.
the starter at some point, but not next year. Let's wait. Let's wait with these rookies. Let's have him be a great player. And like I said, if he's great, then it's hard for the see this defense. Look, like I said, from the outside, this is a lousy team that won 3 games last year. From the inside, we can break down, which we're not going to do today, every position on defense and say there's no reason why this is not a top 10 and maybe a top 7 or 8 or 6 defense in the league. In the league. A lot of work has to be done before then, but they have answers now. And if Carter is great, that's a big answer right in the middle of that defense.
Before we go and talk about the secondary, over under 9.5 sacks, which Lawrence Taylor had his rookie year. Abdul Carter, over under.
Under. That's a lot. That's a lot.
9.5 sacks?
First of all, he has to be healthy. You know, he has to play a lot of games. It has to be healthy. He's going to be, don't forget, and with those 3 guys, they're going to be, their reps, their snaps are going to be a little bit limited, more limited, because they're not going to be on first down. On first down, I don't think all 3 of them will be on the field at the same time, but maybe on 2nd and 9 they'll be on the field at the same time. So I just think that's a lot. Look, Michael Strahan, Osayu Manura, Justin Tuck, and JPP, all 4 of them together did not have 9.5 sacks as rookies. Okay, that's a lot of sacks.
This kid's different.
Okay.
They bolstered up the defensive line, so hopefully when it comes to the run game, they're not putting themselves in position at 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3, like you said, 2nd and 9. You can have that NASCAR package out there. I think they're going to get a little bit more out of the offense this year. That's going to force teams to have to throw the ball late in the 3rd, 4th quarter. I look at this package where those 3, I mean, we saw him post it on his Instagram, which I don't think he should have done. We saw him posted where his spin move, Brian Burns' spin move, Kayvon, like just all of them. I was sitting there like, ouch. Like if I'm Russell Wilson there, I'm throwing the ball on the ground. I'm just like, all right, whatever.
Well, I guarantee you this: if he gets 9.5 sacks as a rookie, they will count. Because sacks
absolutely.
count now.
Yep.
Lawrence Taylor's didn't count. Okay, they will count. Look, it's. I'm not making any predictions other than I guarantee it's going to be fun to watch him play. It's just going to be fun to watch him play.
And guys that are going to benefit from that defensive line is the secondary, and we'll kind of wrap this thing up talking about them. Tay Banks, we've seen a lot from him. We've obviously talked about him throughout the OTAs and minicamp. I haven't seen an interception from him. Dane Belton had another interception today. That guy's good for one of those in the spring and in the summer in training camp. But one thing I was looking at today when they were working, the DBs were working in and out combo coverage. It's a big communication type coverage because if one receiver goes in, one goes out, you're passing guys off, and they are throwing everything out them concept wise. And I was talking to our producer who's sitting on the other side of the camera right now, and I was kind of just breaking down to her how as an offense, we're going to switch release. We're going to throw everything out at these DBs to make sure that their communication is there. And again, it was individuals, not a full speed rep, but I watched with a different feeling on how guys were pointing. Guys were a little bit more verbal than what I've seen and heard in recent years. And I feel like that's because they brought in, it could be because they brought in new coaches on the secondary side. But I feel like I attribute a lot of that to the Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo factor as well. 2 guys that have had success in this league and 2 guys who are coming in that understand, hey, they paid us but combined $99 million between the 2 of us. The Post don't pay us that combined, Paul. But these guys, I feel like they've had their imprint, their footprint on the development of this young secondary all throughout the spring.
Kayvon Thibodeau made a good point the other day. He said they brought in Javon Holland, who was a teammate of mine, meaning Kayvon's at Oregon. So we have a connection already. Yep. They brought in Paulson Adebo, who was a teammate of Bobby Okereke's at Stanford. Okay. So they have a connection already. So now you have, key members of the defense. Yeah, okay, yeah. Remember we did this, Brandon, remember we did this? Oh, yeah, we did this back at Stanford. We called it this. Yeah, okay, we can look at each other. We got a little sync here. We know what's going on. Absolutely. And also you mentioned communication. Look, these are the best kind of free agents to bring in. Not a 29-year-old. These are 25-year-old guys who are healthy. First of all, Paulson Adebo, when he was up at the podium, he looks like a safety.
Yeah, he does.
He's a big guy, right?
Yeah, he does.
He doesn't
looks like a receiver sometimes too.
Well, he looks like that's a big dude. Okay, that's a long, long-armed, long-legged, thick athlete. That's a good-sized cornerback. Deonte Banks is a great size cornerback, you know. Now, they as you mentioned, they have 2 new defensive back coaches, a defensive back coach and a cornerbacks coach. Jeff Burris is the cornerbacks coach, and I asked him specifically about Deonte Banks. What was the big issue with Deonte Banks last year? One of the big issues, effort, right? Effort. He just, you know, and his teammates, it's not talking out of school, his teammates said it. You quit on some plays, you can't do that. And I asked Jeff Burris, can you coach? Some coaches say, I don't coach effort. I don't coach it. I coach technique. I coach discipline. I coach footwork. I don't. You know, you got in the NFL, and he said, Jeff Burris said, you know, effort is at this level is you just assume. You don't really coach effort. So it'll be really interesting to see. You know what? Brian Daboll did not hush when people are suggesting Deonte Banks and Cordell Flott are competing for a starting job. He didn't say Banks is there and. You know, so it's Paulson Adebo and who? So I think it's an open look. Evan Neal was the 7th pick in the draft, and he's now got to learn a new position. Okay, Deonte Banks is a 1st-round pick, and they're saying they're not saying, oh, you're starting, you're fine. We got new coaches for you. They're saying compete. But Burris also did say, looking at him, he's the prototype of what you want as an athlete. Absolutely. So, yeah, the defensive backfield, just like we said about this defense, has the potential. You know, Tyler Nubin missed some time. You know, he's a good-looking athlete. He's got leadership traits to him. The defense right now, when you look at it, there's not a spot where you say that's a problem. Inside linebacker is not a problem. The front is not a problem. The defensive, there's nothing where you say, boy, that is a big problem. There may be some depth issues somewhere, but there's no place where you say they got to hope and pray at that spot. We'll see how it all works out, but that is a reason for optimism.
And when you talk about effort is something that's policed by the players. And I don't think there's going to be one guy that in this building right here before they take off and they come back that's going to put bad effort on tape, especially when you have guys like Jermaine and Luminor talking about the fact that, hey, we're tired of losing. So imagine not running to the ball in camp. Imagine not showing effort on a stalk block in camp. That's something I feel as though is going to be policed and called out by the players. And I don't think a Brian Daboll or Jeff Burris is going to have to do that. But again, it's something we will see. Training camp 34 days away. Real quick, Paul, what are you going to be doing for your 34 days? Am I going to see you DTS down at the shore?
Well, I think Tommy DeVito and Jackson Dart, they also invited me to maybe do this little Love Island scenario. So my wife maybe might nix that, you know.
Okay.
Look, I'll take some time off. You know what I mean? We'll get some writing done here. We'll get some writing done on the back end. Look, Yankees and Mets can pick up the ball for a few weeks here, right? You know, the Knicks took us in New York a long way. It's time for football to recess into the back burner here for a while, you know, and rightly so, because once training camp starts, it's all systems go for many, many months.
And it's going to be all system go for Blue Rush all throughout training camp and the football season. We thank you guys for watching us all throughout the off season. Now, things are going to get great in 34 days. This for Paul Schwartz. I'm Brandon London. Thanks for watching Blue Rush.